Okay, so you've probably already heard of SOUNDPEATS because they're one of the biggest names on Amazon for budget-friendly true wireless earbuds. Most of them you can get for around $50 or less, and there are some genuinely good value options. But there are so many different models, often with similar names and designs and specs, that the lineup is incredibly confusing. So I decided to test as many different pairs as I could, including the brand new Air 3 Pro, so that I could narrow down a list of the best SOUNDPEATS earbuds that you need to know about. Obviously, a lot more earbuds were tested than have made it into this video, so if there's a particular name you want to know about, then there's a good chance they've already been tested. So do leave a comment with your questions about anything from the SOUNDPEATS lineup. And if you want to buy any of these earbuds, then I'll leave links to all of them down in the video description. Just click the link and it'll take you to the Amazon store for your country. So, let's get into it. First up, we have the new Free2 Classic, and these are interesting because they sort of stand alone in the SOUNDPEATS lineup. They're not really a successor to any of the older earbuds, and they're designed as a basic everyday earbud with a minimal feature set but a very low price tag. They're unique in that they have a leatherette material for the case, which is very small and compact, just like the earbuds themselves. It makes them very convenient to carry around, and the lid and magnets work very well with this model. These are actually the second smallest earbuds in the entire lineup, so they're great for smaller ears, and they're very lightweight and comfortable. They also give a secure fit in my ears, so they're pretty good for workouts and come with an IPX5 water resistance rating. With the larger ear tips, they form a tight seal to offer good passive noise isolation, but they don't have any form of noise cancelling or a transparency mode. There are touch controls on either side which are reasonably responsive, but occasionally will mistake a double tap for a single, so they're not perfect. I found this with SOUNDPEATS touch controls in general, in fact. You do have access to volume control and voice assistant, but these don't have wearing detection or a companion app. This means there's no customization at all, so how they perform out of the box is how they'll stay long term. In fact, that's an important point to bear in mind with all of the earbuds that don't have a companion app. You get a surprising 8 hours of playback on a single charge and 30 in total with the case, and like all of the SOUNDPEATS earbuds, they charge via USB-C. They also have Bluetooth 5.1 and support the SBC and AAC codecs, and generally the connection range and stability was pretty good with all of the earbuds actually. The latency is just about low enough for movies, though I wouldn't recommend these for gaming, and like all of the other earbuds in this video, you can use either earbud on its own.
Surprisingly, these are one of the best performers for phone calls. These use CVC noise cancellation to improve vocal clarity and to help minimize background noise. You're listening to these now in a relatively noisy environment, and they do a pretty decent job.
And as for the sound quality, these are really good. They're nicely balanced and offer decent clarity, so the sound is really pleasant. The bass is surprisingly strong for earbuds this small, giving body to the sound, though it's not going to blow you away like some of the other entries we're going to see. It doesn't muddy the mid-range either, vocals remain nice and clear, and a slight roll-off in the highs prevents any harsh or piercing sounds. Of course, these are missing the depth and soundstage of more premium alternatives, but certainly for the price these sound really good, and I can't imagine anyone looking for a budget pair of earbuds would be disappointed. And the price is really the reason why I like the Free2 Classic so much, because they retail for $30 and right now they're down to just $19.99. For $20, these are an absolute steal, genuinely one of the best value pairs of earbuds out there hands down. Sure, they're very feature light, but they sound good, have great battery life and calls, and are super lightweight and compact. But I want to move on now to the SOUNDPEATS Mini, because these are extremely similar in design and features, so I'm sure people will wonder about these particular two. First off, we have an all-plastic case, and as the name would suggest, these are the smallest earbuds in the entire lineup. The Free2 Classic are small, but these are somehow a tiny bit smaller and lighter, so they're the best option for small ears, and are ever so slightly more comfortable and portable as a result. You can see how similar the design is between the two, with the Free2 Classic having more silvery accents, but the controls, water resistance, and the lack of app support ANC or transparency are all the same. There's a slight difference in that the Mini have the newer Bluetooth 5.2, but it didn't really amount to any noticeable difference in real-world use. Battery life is the first major difference between the two, and the smaller Mini only offer 5 hours compared to 8 and 20 in total.
The second major difference is in call quality, where the Mini are also considerably worse. They're passable in quiet environments, but with any loud background noise, you'll find your voice becomes quite muffled. These use only a single mic on each earbud, which could explain the relatively poor performance. But either way, these are slightly worse than the Free2 Classic.
Sound quality is really the area where the Mini perform better, with stronger and more powerful bass being the main feature separating them from the Free2 Classic. There's more sub-bass here, and these thump surprisingly hard for earbuds this tiny. It's impressive. This perhaps slightly encroaches on the mids, but there's still enough clarity that vocals and other instruments don't get drowned out. The highs are again pleasant, which makes for an overall relaxing and slightly bass-heavy sound. These can also get seriously loud, so if you like bass and volume, that's your best reason to get these instead. So the Mini retail for $42.99, but are currently down to $35.99, so they're more expensive than the Free2 Classic, but are obviously very similar in performance. The SOUNDPEATS Mini are actually one of my favourites overall, but I still don't think you can beat the value that the Free2s offer. But I guess the reasons you might still choose the Mini are 1, if you want the smallest possible earbuds from SOUNDPEATS, and 2, if you want that louder, more bass-heavy sound. The SOUNDPEATS Mini are one of the 3 pairs of earbuds that have a Pro model as well, which essentially takes the concept of the Mini and adds in some extra features. You can tell these belong to the same family with this slightly larger but otherwise identical charging case. The earbuds themselves though are not just bigger, but have this 2-tiered design that makes them fit and feel quite different in the ears. I think they're just small and light enough to still deserve Mini in the name, but they definitely feel quite a lot bigger in the ears. I personally don't find this shape anywhere near as comfortable, and I can't get as good a seal in my ears either. For that reason, I find them less suitable for workouts, but they do come with the same IPX5 water resistance rating. I found the touch controls here slightly more responsive though, and you get increased battery life with up to 7 hours per charge and 21 in total. These also swap AAC support for aptX Adaptive, a downgrade for Apple users, but a nice upgrade for those on Android. The latency is just about low enough for watching movies, but these also come with a low latency game mode. It gives a tiny improvement, but it's certainly not a significant change, and I still don't think these are a great choice for gaming. The major pro feature is hybrid noise cancellation and transparency. The ANC does give a noticeable drop in noise compared to off mode, but it really focuses on the low end frequencies and doesn't do much to cancel the mids and highs. I wouldn't say it's good enough to be a huge upgrade over the regular Mini, and there are other SOUNDPEATS earbuds coming up that offer better ANC performance. The transparency mode, however, is rather poor. There's only a slight amplification of your surroundings compared to off mode, so this is quite disappointing. The Mini Pro are one of just a few SOUNDPEATS earbuds that are compatible with the app. Now the SOUNDPEATS app is very basic, doesn't have the cleanest interface and can be prone to connection issues, but unlike most of the SOUNDPEATS earbuds, it does give you a little bit of customization. So you can toggle the game mode, the ANC mode, and the LEDs on the earbud, but the main feature is the preset or custom equalizer to change the sound. Everyone has their own listening preference, so being able to customize the sound is a significant advantage over the earbuds that don't have this, such as the regular Mini. You may have also spotted this adaptive EQ, which plays a series of different frequencies to test your hearing and then creates a personalized EQ based on the results. We've seen this in other earbuds before, and this is sadly one of the poorest attempts at the feature. Most of the testing frequencies are inaudible, and no, that's not just because of my hearing, and I found the resulting EQ to sound pretty awful. It's perhaps to be expected for budget earbuds, but adaptive EQ is best to just ignore.
SOUNDPEATS are claiming 2 mics per earbud for the Mini Pro, and the increase is of course to support ANC, but this can also help with phone calls, and these definitely sound a lot better than the Mini. The voice quality still wasn't the clearest though, so these are a middle of the pack performer for phone calls.
Now for sound quality, you should avoid the common misconception that Pro must mean better sound quality, because that's not necessarily the case. There's first of all a big drop off in both the bass response and the volume. 50% volume on the Mini is roughly 75% for the Pros. The Pros have a brighter sound with slightly boosted upper mids and better treble, but I found myself missing the weighty low end from the Minis. There's certainly more detail on offer here, but without that roll off in the highs, I find the sound can sometimes be a little bit harsh, especially at higher volumes. You can minimise this with a custom EQ, but I generally prefer the more relaxing sound of the regular Mini. I should say though that the listening experience is better with Android devices because of the codec switch. The clarity just seemed a little higher, so that's something else to bear in mind. The Mini Pro are retailing for $79.99 but are currently down to $59.99, so that extra $24 over the Mini goes towards ANC and transparency, increased battery life, improved call quality, and app support. For me personally, I don't think the price is justified. I think the app needs to offer much more. For instance, it doesn't even offer custom controls. I think the ANC performance needs to be better as well, and what's so great about the regular Mini is that tiny, comfortable design. That's the USP. I don't think the Pros quite match that value for money myself, but maybe they offer what you're looking for. I mentioned that there are better ANC performers, so we'll move on now to the T2s, and I'm going to show these off next to the T3s, which you might think are very similar, or perhaps a successor to the T2s, but that's not the case, and this only highlights the issue with SOUNDPEATS' confusing lineup. The cases are again all plastic and starting to get a little bit bigger now, but the main difference is the capsule design for the T2s and the clamshell design for the T3s. Now something you definitely need to know about the T2 case is that the magnets are not very strong and the contact between the charging pins and the earbuds is weak, so sometimes I'll find that only one earbud was charging inside the case, so the battery was flat. Other times I'll go to take a call on my phone and can't hear anything because the audio is still being played through the earbuds even though they're shut inside the case. It's one of my biggest pet peeves and can be really frustrating, so just be aware that the T2s especially are prone to this problem. As for the earbuds themselves, the fundamental difference is the bud design versus the stem design. Above all else, this will be the main reason you choose one over the other. I think the T3s have a more universal fit, and they're slightly more comfortable as well, though I could listen with both for long periods of time. The T2s happen to fit my ears very well though, are slightly more secure, and offer better passive noise isolation, but if you have very small ears then they might be a bit big. I personally think the T2s are better for workouts, and they have a slightly higher IPX5 rating compared to IPX4. They both use touch controls which were generally responsive, though perhaps slightly better on the T2s. They also both support SBC and AAC, but the T2s have Bluetooth 5.1 compared to the T3's 5.2. Again, this didn't make a noticeable difference in real-world use. Both of these gave just about low enough latency for watching movies, but they're not recommended for gaming. You should also note that there's no app support for either earbuds. There was a significant difference with battery life though. The T2s offer almost double on a single charge with 10 hours, and offer more total battery life with the case as well. Now there are 4 noise-cancelling earbuds in the SOUNDPEATS lineup, and these are 2 of them, and they happen to be the best and worst noise cancellers. The best by a considerable margin are the T2s. There's a very noticeable drop in the low-end frequencies, and a small amount for the others as well. The difference compared to the off mode is quite obvious, so the performance is pretty good, especially for earbuds at this price. The T3s, however, only use feed-forward noise cancelling, essentially the cheapest and most basic form of ANC, and you can really tell the difference. There's only a very slight reduction in noise, and it's essentially only the lower mids that are cancelled. It's almost not worth using. Fortunately, these both block noise passively really well, but there's no doubt that the T2s have the far superior noise cancelling performance. As for the transparency mode, it almost flips. There's only a very low amplification of your surroundings with the T2s, so the performance really isn't great at all. The T3's transparency is much better, and you can hear a slight hiss as the outside noise is amplified, but even then, it's only halfway decent.
For mic performance, the T2s were another middle-of-the-pack performer. The background noise is low, but it can cut in and muffle your voice as you're speaking. I noticed a muffled echo behind my voice as well, so only average call quality with these. The T3s performed much better, and probably let in the least background noise of all. You can hear it's basically silent. This aggressive cancellation can sometimes cut out your voice though, so these aren't at the top spot. But my voice was usually quite clear, so calls were pretty good.
For sound quality, there's actually very little to separate them. Both offer a reasonably clean, slightly warm sound signature with a good bass response. Listening very closely, I'd say the T3s have ever so slightly more in terms of bass, whereas the T2s have a slight edge for the mids and highs. Both of these are just about reaching harsh levels of treble at higher volumes, but usually don't cross that threshold. I think generally the sound quality is pretty decent for the price, but it's not a standout feature for either earbuds, and there are definitely others in this list that beat them. The T2s are retailing for $65.99, currently down to $59.99, whilst the T3s are considerably cheaper at $39.99. For me, this makes the T3s better overall in terms of value for money, plus you get better mic quality, transparency, and a more universal fit. But the T2s offer much better ANC and battery life, which could be the deal breaker. Again though, it's the shape of the earbud that I'd say is the most important factor. Okay, I want to move on now to the SOUNDPEATS Sonic, and these are the second pair that have a Pro version as well, but there's surprisingly very little between them. So these both have pretty bulky pod-shaped charging cases, and aside from the finish, they would appear to be extremely similar. The glossy finish on the Pro case is a bit more slippery and difficult to open and to take the earbuds out, but unlike the T2s, the magnets work great here, and the earbuds snap back into position every time. But one of the major differences between the Sonic and Sonic Pro is that the Pro case supports wireless charging. They're the only earbuds in this video to do so. The two-tone finishes separate these from the usual generic black plastic for most SOUNDPEATS earbuds. They're unique in that they have glowing LEDs on the outside for each earbud. These glow orange whilst charging and actually stay lit up white during use, so this is really a design choice that you may enjoy, but pressing 4 times on the earbud will turn off the LEDs if you prefer. And I mean press as opposed to tap, since these are the only earbuds in this list to use button controls as opposed to touch controls. I know some people prefer the more tactile feel of a button, but these are very firm buttons that take a lot of force to press. It can hurt pushing the earbud into your ear to use them, and the loud click they give is almost deafening, so I personally hate them. They also use very firm and small ear tips, even the large size, which feel very different from the usual silicone ear tips. It means for me I can't get as tight a seal in the ear, even with the largest tips, which actually has a consequence for audio quality, which I'll cover later. They do stay in place for most workouts I do, and they're IPX5 rated, but I wouldn't say these are the most comfortable to wear for long periods of time. These offer Bluetooth 5.2 and support the aptX adaptive codec, which is great, but unlike the Mini Pro, they also keep the AAC codec, so iPhone users don't miss out. The latency was low enough for watching movies, plus these both have a low latency game mode. This time, game mode works really well, and might even be good enough for fast-paced shooters. Weirdly, the regular Sonic can give a faint crackling sound with game mode on, which I didn't hear with the Pros, so that's something to watch out for. There's no app support for either pair, which means no customization and no software updates or fixes in the future. The standout feature for the Sonics though is the battery life. These give a ridiculous 15 hours on a single charge, which is just insane. Now in real world use I get closer to 13 hours depending on the volume, but even so, this is extremely good, and far better than anything else in this video.
For mic quality, there is a distinct difference between the two. You're listening now to the regular Sonic, where the mic quality is rather poor. My voice was quiet, muffled, and not very well isolated from the background noise. Switching over to the Pros, and for some reason, things improved massively. The Sonic Pro is still only a mid-range performer for calls, but my voice was considerably louder and clearer with these.
Interestingly, these are both marketed by SOUNDPEATS as being the earbuds for bass, and with a name like Sonic, you might expect the sound quality to be the best with these. But rather than best, I think the most appropriate description would be brightest, which separates them from the typical warm sound signature. Their strength lies in the clarity for the mids and highs. It's a really clean sound, and if you like a bright tuning, then I'd actually say these sound really good. But in terms of bass, this is really lacking. I think part of this is due to the earbud shape, and those smaller ear tips don't create as good an acoustic seal to enjoy that bass response, so you may find these better depending on your ear shape. Still, the low end is noticeably weaker than most of the other earbuds, and I find the sound is lacking body because of it. As for the difference between the regular and Pro models, the Pros have a dual driver design, and that balanced armature driver really does enhance the treble compared to the regular Sonic. They just sound more crisp and detailed, but interestingly, the bass is even weaker with these, perhaps the weakest in this video. SOUNDPEATS did fix the Sonic's low volume output though, and the Pros are considerably louder. So overall, there's quite a distinctive difference in terms of sound quality, but I still find it puzzling how weak the bass response is with these earbuds. So that's wireless charging, the mic quality and the sound quality that are the only major differences, and as a result, there's only a small difference in the price tag, though at the moment the Sonic are down from $54 to $49.99. I think with that Pro label, you should be getting a lot more. There's no ANC, transparency, customization, or app support, for example. Still, at those prices, I think the Pro is worth spending more for, and these earbuds could be good if you want great battery life, button controls, and a bright sound signature without too much bass. So I think we should move from these onto the actual best sounding earbuds, which are the H1, and I'm going to compare these side by side with the H2, which, again, aren't actually a successor, and there are some important differences. It's hard to understand the naming system here looking at the design. The case and earbud shape are completely different. The H2s look like they belong in the Sonic family instead, with that similar silver and rose gold colouring. The H2 case definitely looks and feels more premium, and the H1 case is the biggest and bulkiest of all. The H2's battery LEDs are on the outside and glow when you open the lid, whereas the H1s are on the inside and only show when you move the earbuds. I also had that issue with one of the earbuds not connecting properly with the pins in the case with both of these models, but especially with the H1s. I really wish the magnets were stronger or the case design was better to prevent this annoying, albeit intermittent problem. The earbud shape is the biggest difference between them. The H1 has a more typical bud shape versus the H2 stem design. This has a huge impact on the fit and comfort, where the H2s are the clear winner. They're really comfortable, and I can get a very secure fit with a tight seal for great passive noise isolation, but with the H1s, they're the bulkiest of the lot. Interestingly, they come with Comply foam tips as well as silicone tips, but even with the largest set, I couldn't get a great seal. I just find this shape rather awkward, and it never feels like they're fully set in position in my ears. They don't fall out, but the overall comfort isn't great, and I found that just the slightest repositioning in my ears can drastically alter the sound quality. The bass can fluctuate between really great and really lacking with just a tiny movement, and it can be tough to get the fit just right. For this reason, the H2s would be a much better choice for workouts as well, though they both have an IPX5 rating. They also both use touch controls, which were a bit easier to locate on the larger surface of the H1s, and again, they were generally responsive, but occasionally mistook a double for a single tap. Connectivity was identical too, with Bluetooth 5.2, AAC and aptX adaptive support, and a low latency game mode that works surprisingly well, so these are both absolutely fine for movies and games. The big differences come firstly with battery life. We get literally twice as much with the H1s at 10 hours and 40 in total with the case. Another point is that, for some reason, only the H1s get app support. Now we've seen how limited the features are with this app, and it can be a pain to use, but importantly it means you have EQ options, so you can adjust the sound only with the H1s and not the H2s. And thirdly, you've got a huge difference with the microphone quality. You've got essentially the best pair against the worst.
So I'll actually start with the H2s, which sound really good for phone calls. My voice was loud and clear. They're ever so slightly beaten in clarity by another pair, but they beat that pair for noise isolation, which is also useful for calls. So these are arguably the best overall for phone calls. And now switching over to the H1s, you can hear the massive drop in both volume and clarity. My voice is more muffled, but it's really just the very low volume that makes it difficult to use these for phone calls. So this is clearly a big factor separating the H1 and 2.
Okay, so for audio quality, let's start with the winners, the H1s. These are the standout winners in this list and one of the best sounding earbuds you can get for under $100, but with an important caveat. They have the clarity of the Sonic Pros, but balance this out with punchy bass and offer greater overall depth. There's perhaps not as much of that weighty sub-bass that the Minis offer, but the low end is more controlled and the dual driver setup balances it out with far superior treble. Now the caveat I speak of is how highly dependent the sound quality is on the fit. So that's going to come down to your particular ear shape and the ear tips you use. With the slightest movement in the ears, that bass can disappear, and the H1s are by far the most position-dependent earbuds in terms of sound quality. The others are much more flexible and forgiving. The H2s have a much more consistent sound, and with that tighter seal in the ear, I'd argue deliver even more powerful bass. But despite also using a dual driver setup, the clarity and treble just doesn't compare to the H1s. These have a much warmer, bass-heavy sound by comparison. They're just missing those crisp highs, though the treble is still superior to the T and Mini series. I think an argument could be made for these taking the number 2 spot for sound, and it's actually a lot easier to get these sounding good because they're far less dependent on the earbud position. The fit is much more universal. But remember that these don't have app support, so there are no EQ options, whereas you can tweak the H1 sound to your own personal preference. So overall, if sound quality is your focus, then the H series would definitely be my recommendation. These are both selling for $79.99, down from $120, so they're the most expensive earbuds in this list, but they're also the best sounding. Still, there's no ANC, transparency, or wireless charging, which are popular features available in some of the alternatives, so you've got to think about your particular priorities. And so our final entries will be for the brand new Air 3 Pro and the Air 3s, which they do succeed. And our third and final Pro model proves that there's really no formula to the SOUNDPEATS naming system, and there are some interesting choices as to what the Air 3s sacrifice for the new Pro features, which are not all good changes. First of all, we have very simple black plastic cases, with the Pro case being slightly larger and offering a redesigned charging LED. The Air 3 case is actually tiny, even smaller than the Mini case in some dimensions, so it's extremely travel friendly. But one thing I like about the Air case is that none of the other earbuds has is a button on the case which you can hold to enter pairing mode or to reset the earbuds. This is much easier than trying to do this with touch controls if something goes wrong, which definitely does happen with budget earbuds, so it's something I think all earbud cases should have as a backup. The earbud design is perhaps the main distinguishing factor, because the Air 3 has a semi-open design similar to AirPods, whilst the Air 3 Pro uses silicone ear tips for a closed design similar to AirPods Pro, and the parallels with Apple's earbuds is obvious. The Air 3s are incredibly light and just gently rest in the ears, so this is a super comfortable design that, since it doesn't penetrate the ear canal, can be worn for hours on end. I typically find silicone ear tips absolutely fine, and the Pros are extremely light and comfortable in their own right, but this is obviously a major difference. Comfort is definitely a strength for the Air series though. It means that the Air 3 fit is not very secure, so they're not a great choice for workouts despite the IPX5 rating, and there's essentially no passive noise isolation. So if you're wearing these outdoors or in a noisy environment, all of that background noise is going to filter straight into your ears as well, potentially drowning out your music. The Pros on the other hand have great passive noise isolation and fit much more securely since the ear tips provide a grip in the ears. Oddly, they're only IPX4 rated though, so a minor downgrade. They both use touch controls, but I found the regular Air 3s to be much more responsive. They both occasionally misinterpreted taps, but were generally okay. The most interesting difference for me is that the Air 3s have wearing detection, so they can auto-pause and play your music as you take them out and put them back in. They're the only earbuds in this list to do so, and it's a bit stupid that this feature didn't carry over to the supposed Pro model. So what do the Pros give you that the Air 3s don't? Well, the main feature is going to be ANC and transparency modes. The noise cancelling performance was okay. There's a noticeable drop in the low-end frequencies, but they do very little to cancel the mids and highs. The performance is similar to the Mini Pro. Obviously, with the ear tip design, they already block out much more sound passively, but I wouldn't say to buy these purely for noise cancelling. The T2s, for example, have much stronger ANC. The transparency mode was again only average. This is something that SOUNDPEATS seems to struggle with, and the amplification of your surroundings really isn't that strong. The T3s were slightly better here. With the semi-open nature of the regular Air 3s, they obviously let you hear your surroundings much more easily, but importantly, that happens whether you want them to or not. Now for battery life, the Pros bring a small improvement with 6 hours on a single charge and around 24 in total with the case. By comparison, the Air 3s actually have the poorest battery life in this video. Connectivity is unchanged though. We have the same Bluetooth 5.2 and codec support, including for aptX Adaptive, and I found the latency was low enough for movies. Both of these also have a game mode, which does bring slightly lower latency for gaming, but it wasn't quite as good as some of the other earbuds like the Sonic or H series. Both of these earbuds come with app support, and you get the same features as the other earbuds, with the exception that you can toggle the wearing detection feature with the Air 3s, but it means you can adjust the sound quality with both of these earbuds.
For the mic quality, there was a surprising difference. You're listening now to the regular Air 3s, where the performance was excellent. These would be number one in terms of the actual mic performance, keeping my voice loud and clear and lowering the background noise. But obviously, the semi-open design means that it's harder for you wearing these to hear your caller in a noisy environment. So perhaps the H2s are the best overall for calls. Swapping over now to the Air 3 Pro, it's much easier to hear the caller, but there's an obvious drop in the mic quality as well. The background noise is louder and my voice becomes more muffled. So performance was okay, but the Air 3s were better.
Now for audio quality, these earbuds are almost the opposite to each other. The Air 3s are first of all very loud, and the sound quality is decent. It's reasonably well balanced and free from any harsh sibilants, but there's nothing that really stands out about them either. It's kind of hard to be immersed in your music with a semi-open design, and it means that the bass response is much more muted than the other earbuds in this list. The sound isn't completely empty though, and you get the sense that if these had the ear tip design of the Pros, then the bass would be pretty good. But these are lacking in clarity for the mid-range and the crisp highs of some of the other earbuds we've seen. The sound quality just isn't a major strength. As for the Pros, these have a decidedly bass-heavy sound signature, and the bass thumps pretty hard. Your music is much more immersive from the earbud design alone, but actually the clarity is even poorer with these than with the Air 3s. Vocals are more muted, there's less detail, and the volume drops off quite considerably. So overall, it was actually a bit disappointing. It makes for a pleasant overall sound, but it's definitely a warm sound signature that's lacking in the clarity and refinement that some of the other SOUNDPEATS earbuds have. These earbuds are brand new, so it could be the case that an update will improve things soon after launch. But for now, I wouldn't say that the sound quality is a big strength of these either. The Air 3s are selling for $49.99, whilst the new Pro model will be $59.99. Though there is a $20 discount available at launch, so check the link in the description if you want to buy these. I think $10 is actually quite a fair price increase, given how few upgrades the Pro model has. It's essentially just ANC and transparency, a slight battery increase, and that new ear tip design. The bass does get boosted as well, but otherwise, there are mostly downgrades. You lose out on wearing detection, the IP rating drops, the mic quality decreases, and they're not as lightweight and portable either. I think liking that semi-open design is going to be the deal breaker with getting the Air 3s. But without an update to improve the treble on the new Pro model, I've been left feeling a little underwhelmed with the Air 3 Pro. Still, at under $50, the value for money is still pretty good. Okay, so there's obviously quite a lot of info there about each of the earbuds, so I've put together this table to summarise the relative performance of each one. We have a score out of 10 for the bass, mids and highs, a ranking from 1st to 11th for the performance categories, and an overview of the main specs as well. So pause here if you want to compare these earbuds side by side. I'll also give you my top picks for all of the major categories, and as you can see, there's a different winner for each category, which just goes to show that the best SOUNDPEATS earbuds really depends on what you personally prioritise. I'm sure there will be a spec or feature that will be the deal breaker for you. If you're looking for the best all-round performer, my personal choice would be the SOUNDPEATS H2. They're comfortable, sound great, and have decent call quality. You get a more rounded feature set with the Air 3 Pro, however, and at a lower price tag too, so those could be in contention as well if you're on a budget. But as I said before, the standout performer and my personal favourite has to be the Free2 Classic. I just don't think you can beat the overall value for money. They sound good, have good battery life, good mic quality, and they're an absolute no-brainer for only $20. Let me know in the comments section though, what are your favourite SOUNDPEATS earbuds? Remember that more earbuds were tested than have made it into this video, so be sure to ask about any you're curious about, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to see more videos like this. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.